Music can really make or break a video game. A great soundtrack can raise the spirits, while a bad soundtrack can cause you to go into podcast mode or even dump a game altogether. I'm looking at you, Sonic Chronicles Dark Brotherhood. But when a game has a good soundtrack, it can really elevate an already good game to a great game. Can you imagine Chrono Trigger without its iconic soundtrack? It would still be a great game, but with that amazing score, the game is just that much more amazing. So I want to pay homage to some of my favorite RPG soundtracks today. Soundtracks that really do bless your ear holes with delightful aural beauty. Melodies that will make your heart swell, anthems that will accent your ride into battle, and tunes that will make you buy way too many medical herbs. I'm Richard for RPG Fortress, and this is our top 10 RPG soundtracks. Number 10, Shining Force. You all saw this one coming. Of course, Shining Force is going to be on my list as I am Mr. Shining Force. The second game in the Shining series and the start of the SRPG powerhouse that, at least once upon a time, was a top-shelf RPG series. While the Shining Force OST doesn't have a huge number of tracks, it makes up for this fact with some absolute bangers. This soundtrack is full of songs that will invade your psyche, causing you to hum them for days thereafter. You probably won't see Shining Force on a lot of best soundtrack lists. I fully submit that this entry is very much based on personal nostalgia. But for me, the Shining Force soundtrack is always going to be on my mind for its classic fantasy-fired melodies and marching percussion anthems. Number 9, Suikoden. An underrated classic of a game perpetually overshined by its little brother Suikoden 2, the original Suikoden is one of my most cherished games and one of my favorite games on the PS1. And that's saying a lot. Have you seen the list of RPGs on the PS1? Being early PlayStation games, Suikoden, Wild Arms, and Final Fantasy VII introduced a lot of people to Red Book audio, that being the standard for CD-based audio. Games went from bleeps and bloops to much more realistic audio samples. And Suikoden made the best of this with loads of digital instruments that sound fantastically real. The soundtrack for Suikoden is out of this world. The game has loads of folksy melodies, incredible harmonies, and bombastic tunes. The soundtrack just doesn't stop. Regardless if you are deep in battle or traversing the beautiful countryside, this game has the perfect accompaniment tracks. Number 8, Xenogears. Xenogears is one of those games that is more than a little bit f***ed up. Released on the original PlayStation a million years ago and promising huge robot battles and full-on deicide, the finished project was marred with the scars of delays and interpersonal drama amongst the devs. But for me, Xenogears is truly a warts-and-all favorite. The mishmash of Christian imagery, Nietzschean philosophy, and huge robot battles all tickle my fancy to the max. And to go along with this wild conglomeration of topics and aesthetics is one hell of a soundtrack. Yasunori Mitsuda has been a beloved composer since Chrono Trigger for the SNES. His knowledge of composition, ability to weave all forms of emotion into music, and his more than apparent fixation on Celtic music has gotten the man loads of fans across the years. And I'm one of them. Number 7, Lisa the Painful RPG. One of the darkest, most fucked up, and funniest RPGs I have ever played was Lisa the Painful RPG. An indie PC RPG from a one-man dev, Lisa brings the tale of a dystopian future where women have gone extinct and the remaining male population have gone absolutely fucking loopy. Lisa the Painful RPG is what I like to call an Earthbound-like. It's an RPG with a lot of personality and aesthetic cribbed from the Earthbound/Mother games. And that includes the soundtrack. The OST for Lisa the Painful is equal parts massive, peculiar, and insane. Experimentation is the name of the game with this game's wild soundtrack. Every piece of music is dripping with so much life and absurdity that I found myself stopping frequently just to listen to the music. Hip-hop, avant-garde, electronica, folk, drum and bass, and so much more, this OST is utterly unique and jaw-dropping. Number 6, The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. My first foray into this huge and ongoing JRPG series only really began in late 2023, and let me tell you, for being the worst of the series, Trails in the Sky OG has me hooked. A huge game with so much to do and see, and almost all of it is solid gold. The game's soundtrack is absolutely incredible. I found myself humming tracks from this adventure for weeks after I finished it. The game has some quintessential all-time perfect adventuring music. The battle themes, just phenomenal stuff. Even the town themes are memorable. This is a game that heavily leans on jazz as an auditory backbone for a lot of its tracks. If you don't like jazz, well, you're a big stupid dumbhead, but also you're missing out on an outlandishly fun and vibrant soundtrack, so don't skip it to listen to dumb podcasts. Number 5, Valkyrie Profile. Valkyrie Profile, what a game. A very unique and one-of-a-kind title for the original PS1. This game melds side-scrolling exploration, a simple yet complex battle system, and some truly dark and fascinating characters. And yeah, the soundtrack is out of this world. The name Motoi Sakuraba can be contentious. This man has written approximately 1 million video game soundtracks, and a lot of them can be pretty samey. He is an incredibly talented musician, but a lot of his compositions have recurring elements and melodies, leitmotifs and orchestration, causing several soundtracks to sound very similar. Valkyrie Profile is the absolute pinnacle of this man's career. While it contains a lot of the very prog rock, super shimmering keyboard tracks that he is known for, these tracks are also very satisfying to listen to. The VP OST has the right level of virtuoso sheen and down-to-earth writing to appease prog heads and normie music appreciators alike. Number 4, Chrono Trigger. I already sucked Yasunori Mitsuda's dick once during this review, so I guess it's time to suck it again. Chrono Trigger is one of those games that quote-unquote needs no introduction, but simply saying quote-unquote game soundtrack good just won't do. So I will try to fill 3 paragraphs. Yes, I'm a little bit salty because I want to do a full-on Chrono Trigger video, but literally every single person on this platform has a Chrono Trigger video. The soundtrack to this game is what dreams are made of. While I prefer the Genesis sound chip, just chill out, it's a personal preference, the SNES sound chip is perfect for the Chrono Trigger soundtrack. The happy tracks are warm and inviting, the aggressive tracks are powerful and energetic. The soundtrack is composed well, but also fits the actual audio fidelity of the SNES hardware. The genres inside the game's soundtrack are incredibly varied. The game features beautiful and captivating classical pieces, raucous rock and roll tracks, and tear-jerking folk songs. Mitsuda jams and crams so much melody into each composition. It's 2024, and I am still blown away every time I hear any track from this OST. Literally, art. Number 3, Persona 3 Reload. Baby, 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 unleash the frogs, it's Persona 3 Reload. Yes, I am opting to go for the latest and greatest version of Persona 3. Why the latest version? Is it because that's what I'm playing right now and it's clearly on my mind 24/7? Yeah, probably. But I also think that the slight updates and the higher fidelity recordings make a near-perfect soundtrack that much better. Persona 3 has, well, at least for the time, a pretty unique world where you take on the role of teenagers who are out to save the world, but they also do regular day-to-day teenager things. So the soundtrack has many tracks that fit into the modern world. This game's soundtrack boasts hip-hop, trance, electronica, and so much more. And it all fits. Whether you are slapping goblins in the face, trying not to get groomed by a teacher, or shopping for a diazepam at the local pharmacy. This dumb game soundtrack is also meme after meme after meme. Just do a search for Burn My Dread and bask in the unending memery that will be shot directly into your eye holes. Number 2, Final Fantasy VI. FF3/6 was not the first FF game that I played. I had played FF2/4 and FF1/1 before FF3/6, but FF3/6 was the first game I had read about in magazines and therefore was excited for beforehand. And this title may have been the first game whose OST hooked me. I was a Sega kid growing up, so most of my formative years were spent playing the Master System, Genesis, and Sega CD. So when I returned home from a family outing one day in '96 to see that our home was broken into, and my Sega console stolen by some gormless sucker, I was crestfallen. But thankfully, a family friend had a SNES, and they lent it to me for as long as I needed. I then spent hundreds of hours with Final Fantasy VI. The game's soundtrack threw me around like it was the end of the world, and I mean, have you played FF6? That's kind of the story. This OST is so emotive that some of the tracks will make me tear up from nostalgia alone. Nobuo Uematsu was on top of his game here. I know a lot of people say that the FF7 or FF8 soundtracks are better, but for me at least, FF6 is the absolute pinnacle of 16-bit Final Fantasy for me. Number 1, Phantasy Star 4. Definitely a black sheep number 1. I will fully back up my opinion that Phantasy Star 4 is my favorite RPG OST ever. Phantasy Star 4 is the final chapter in Sega's Phantasy Star series. The game series concluded in 1994 with a game that actually wrapped up the events from the preceding games. A solid 16-bit RPG with turn-based combat that is both tactical and fast-paced, multiple worlds to explore, and a soundtrack that is unbeatable. The OST for PS4 contains a huge amount of tracks and a wide variety of styles, but a lot of the tracks have this electronica lean, not unlike a lot of Yuzo Koshiro's works. And the remarkable and truly sad revelation that this game's composers Izuho Takeuchi and Masaki Nakagaki have barely any game credits before or after this title is truly heartbreaking. Nakagaki only has 3 game credits total. Please come back, please do more, both of you, I beg you. Also, some tracks that Bo composed for the first Phantasy Star return in absolutely mind-bending electronica dance versions. What the PS4 soundtrack for me is this incredible and 110% unique approach to an RPG OST. Phantasy Star melds swords and sorcery with cybernetics and spaceships, and I think this organic meets technological approach also extends to the music, and I find it very fascinating. Folk melodies and pulsing electronic beats mixed together has never sounded so good. Music means different things to different people, and no two people are ever going to have the same top 10 favorite list. Furthermore, game fans sure do love their music. I know I do. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the list. I had a hell of a time putting it together. What's your favorite RPG OST? Do you agree with my list? Let me know below. I love game music and I love discussion, so let's slam the two together and have a chinwag. If you want more game discussion, head over to our Discord. Find a link below. Also, hitting the like button would be swell. For RPG Fortress, I've been Richard. See you next time, and don't forget to hug a cat. Goodbye.